my research and making stuff, being around other people, sharing ideas, and that. So I'm going to talk a lot about foraminifera today. Anybody foraminifera? Are you familiar with these? Yeah. Okay. The scientists, I bet. Yeah. And so for the past few years, I've been learning about foraminifera from Dr. Joan Bernhardt from Woods Hole Oceanographic. And so I'm going to show you a lot of prints, tools, musical instruments that were kind of based on learning about these microorganisms. I wanted to start by introducing myself a little further by sharing this instrument that I finished just yesterday. So I brought it, it was about 90% done, and I just strung it up and tidied some things up and yesterday. But it's made of American chestnut, which is an endangered species. The one small limb fell off a tree at the University of Iowa, so I collected it, milled it, and made this tiny little soprano ukulele because that's how much wood I have. You know? And so there's really only one American chestnut at the University of Iowa. Where I come from in the Northeast, it used to be about 20% of all hardwoods, and so that's it's a very special tree. This one that we have at the university. When there was a storm, we lost the limb, and the arborist gave it to me. So I want to tell you a few formative things. My father was a farmer, so that really helps. I'll talk about my aesthetic in making, and that was really kind of formative. The other thing I want to tell you is that after undergrad, I worked as a costume and prop builder for sort of Broadway productions, and that was also really formative because I was really interested. I'm really interested in performative things, objects that do stuff, tools. So I'm going to jump over to foraminifera. There is different kinds of prints here. A silk screen all the way to the left. In the middle, there's an electron scan microscope image, and this one closest to me is a woodcut. And the important thing with this image is to share a huge array of species that exist. This is Dr. Joan Bernhardt from Woods Hole, and I love scientist drawings, so watch out, I'm going to steal your drawings when you're explaining something to me. But this is where Joan is explaining the difference between two different species. So Joan's been studying this creature, and there's about thousands of species. So she's been studying them all over the world, and specifically I was spending time with her in the Pacific, the Santa Barbara Basin, and then also out to sea a bit further. And they're really important to study because of their, they have a huge, there's many reasons to study them, but they have this fossil record that's something like 500 million years old. And so these species can be compared to certain species that exist now, so you can get a sense of the chemistry in the water. And I am not a scientist, and so I'm really simplifying things. But here's another kind of, if you look back at these previous images, these are foraminifera that are, the shells sort of grow through calcium, and then these are what's called agglutinated foraminifera, where they are sort of growing, collecting minerals and that from the seawater. So I spent a lot of time looking at images and then making these etchings, these prints that kind of look at a variety of different foraminifera. And really what I'm doing is, with the prints, is kind of getting to learn about foraminifera. And so here, this image is, these are two different plates, two different prints, but the same species, Bolivina. And on the left there, I'm using mud from the Santa Barbara Basin to print with. And then the one on the right, it's more actually Santa Barbara Basin mud with traditional printmaking inks. And I like to think about this idea of biomarkers quite a bit in my work in general, where there's this foreign trace on something. And so this, you can tell I drew with my fingers on the etching plate. for printing it, so on this one on the right. So I'm kind of interested in this idea of touch. Now, I'm jumping back in time a little bit. I have had this obsession with a couple of materials, wood in general, but also tin cans. And so tin cans are really great. They're beautiful. You cut them open, fold them out. This is a 10-pound can, which is the bigger ones. So you cut it open and then fold it, and it looks sort of like this. The interiors are different colors. They're really strong and, and yeah, I just think they're beautiful. And they're sort of, I started working with them like 17 years ago. And really, it keeps changing, my interest in them, and evolving. And I could probably do a talk just on tin cans. But a special thing I want to say is, I'm interested in this idea of what I call farmer craft. My dad was a farmer. And I remember him fixing my catalytic converter with a tin can, which is probably illegal. But yeah, tin cans will show up quite a bit in this project. And so I wanted to show, these are these printing presses that I've been building out of found materials. And so what you'll see is, this is all collected stuff. And here's some tin can form right here. And then this is the resultant image, the print that's made. So there's this whole architecture of found materials and found handmade inks that go down into these tin can vessels. And they're sort of geological and kind of interested in time, pressure, and fluid to make these things. A little detail of the plumbing inside there. And here's a detail of some of the tin cans. So this is probably 25 tin cans in the foreground, just bent and folded. And here are some of the resulted images. So I wanted to share a few images of going out to sea, because it's been very important. I like to think about the tool and its importance. I like to think about where things are made. And so this is a multi-core 800, MC800 in the foreground. And while being out at sea, I got to essentially be part of the scientific crew. This wasn't an artist residency per se. I was an artist learning about stuff, learning about the science that they're doing, and getting to learn how to use the tools and help them drop the MC800 down. And it would go down about 600 meters, press a button, and then essentially these plastic straws would go into the ground and pull up this mud, but here's the top level, and it's undisturbed. It's really a beautiful tool. It's actually a very simple tool too, springs and that. And so I helped distribute the different mud samples, and the foraminifera are in the top, I think, top centimeter, I believe, the living ones. And we worked at all hours of the night. And these were benthic foraminifera, so they lived in the mud. And these are more planktic foraminifera on a different trip. And I kind of love what's going on, this intense experience of being out at sea, where we're collecting all this stuff, collecting all these organisms, and then kind of put them in an algae bottle, run them over to this lab that's on the ship, and doing stuff in real time that feeds research for like years. It's just fascinating. I love that process. And I always feel like, what am I doing here? How did I get this little opportunity? But I have some skills. So I've fixed tools. This is me sewing a net that we were using for a project. And here are just a couple of pictures of, I could show you a million pictures of the ship and the tools. But often I'm working on downtime on some plates and getting real-time feedback from a scientist about why something might be wrong, or kind of explaining something to me in a very simple way. And this is an in-process print still. I started it out at sea, and it's from a metal plate. So I learned that I have to round the corners when I'm out at sea. just so they're not poking. So we got about 4 minutes. So this is a printing press that I made from collecting materials out at sea and Jones Lab in Woods Hole. And so it was basically collecting materials, our waste from eating, and then also tools from the ship's crew that broke. And so I actually ended up throwing out some of my clothing and packed up my suitcase to send stuff home. But yeah, some details here. So this piece really kind of references the ship in colors and then also just sort of nautical details. And I started playing around and looking at a variety of different organisms and foraminifera. I started just playing and inventing this sort of creature. And also making inks from the broken tools. Here, this is a bit of copper here, and here this is actually mud from the bottom of the sea, and this is a resultant image. And I also got back to Iowa, and I started making ink out of basically my water in my studio. So I filled these concrete mixing trays up and let the water evaporate over months to then make this white ink to go with the mud from out at sea. And I kind of like this idea. It's the closest place I can imagine to the farthest place I've ever been. And I didn't know what to call this fictional creature, so I asked the scientists to come up with a name, and they named it Sanathonica anoxiki, belonging to a sandy anoxic underworld. So, in 2 minutes, I'm going to share information about musical instruments, which is what I'm going to continue to be working on while here. So, this is what I call the hexagonous ukulele, and it's kind of references if you look inside the sound hole there, you'll see the sort of surface of what this species looks like. And general detail of the inlay is kind of follows the shape of this microorganism. So I made this particular ukulele, needed something small to bring out to sea. And so here's a PhD student that chances were great. I mean, it was really wonderful that he played ukulele. And so there happened to be guitar out at sea, so we wrote a song. We performed it. I'm not going to share that with you today. But yeah, it's going to bounce over to a few other quick instruments made out of garbage, more tin cans. I wish I had time to show you a video of this thing performing. It's very percussive, and it's controlled by me, and I walk away, and it has motors and tin cans and all found materials, aside from the PA that kind of brings volume. This is the interior of the acoustic bass guitar. This is a kind of an experimental noise maker where I then drew a species of foraminifera on it, and then also kind of sandblasted a texture of another species on there. Sometimes I use printmaking to come up with an idea. Maybe I will, or maybe I'll make this, maybe not, but this is based on maybe making a guitar that sort of spins and kind of like an Aeolian harp where the wind makes sound. This is an instrument that I call a bender, and it exactly does that. You play it and it makes these sounds. And so this is the detail. So I'm hand making my pickups out of copper and steel and magnets. And there's some etched printmaking plates. This is actually a volume knob that just turns off electric instruments. An amp made from a tin can. There's a detail of one of my pickups. And there's me playing ukulele out at sea. And I want to end with a couple images, including my daughter, Georgia, who will be here from October 12th to the 18th. This is a foraminifera costume, and it's called we call it pertussis. I can't recall the first part of the scientific name, but she wanted to be a foraminifera that had purple in it. And so after some research, there's sometimes purple shows up in this. And this is a recent print that kind of brings together a lot of ideas. It has wood, some of my daughter's drawings, some of my plates made of tin cans, and drawings by scientists. Yeah, I just finished this print about a month ago. So background is different tone woods that I've collected. Thank you so much.